These men, armed only with an inkjet printer and a sharp eye for detail, managed to shake the foundations of an entire nation's financial sector. He didn't use violence or threats to build his criminal empire. Instead, he relied on his exceptional forgery skills and masterful finesse to infiltrate every aspect of the Canadian economy. So how did a self-taught nerd from a small town near Windsor, Ontario, become the master of such a nefarious craft? And what eventually led to the downfall of his meticulously constructed empire? Prepare for a wild ride as we delve into the fascinating tale of the rise and fall of Canada's most notorious counterfeiter. Counterfeit currency has existed for as long as the currency itself. People used metal coins for trade before paper currency was invented. It is said that money coinage started around 600 BC. During this era, people used to counterfeit gold and silver coins by mixing base metals with them. Then came paper currency, which started from China in the 13th century. The money was made using wood from mulberry trees. Therefore, in order to prevent counterfeiting, the mulberry forests were heavily guarded by the government, and the punishment for counterfeiting was death. The practice of counterfeiting currency continued nonetheless. In the late 18th and early 19th century, many locals in England would produce counterfeit currency and sell it wholesale, while the Irish immigrants to London were deeply involved in spending that fake money. Similar to China and other countries, colonial and post-colonial America also took steps to curb the counterfeiting of currency. However, the practice became so prevalent initially that authors like John Neal estimated that half of the U.S. currency in circulation was counterfeit by the early 19th century. Canada has had to fight the counterfeiting of not only its own currency but of its neighbor, the USA as well. Many counterfeiters of the U.S. dollar had their production plants in Quebec and Ontario, near the Canada-U.S. border. One such person was Joseph Bagdasarian, who produced more than $24 million of 100 US dollar bills in the 1990s. Maybe it was stories like Joseph's that inspired Wesley Weber to enter the world of counterfeiting. So when did he start this money-making criminal empire? Let's find out. Born in 1974 in the small town of River Canard south of Windsor, Ontario, Wesley Weber had a normal childhood. He was raised by loving parents who supported him in his academic pursuits. He started showing interest in computers from a young age, and this interest would have a major impact on his life later. During his teen years, Wesley struggled to fit in with his classmates because of his introverted nature. This was also a reason why computers became his best friends. Through algorithms and coding, Wesley found a sense of meaning. Unfortunately, this newfound obsession with the digital world also made him an outcast in his class and among his peers. In an attempt to break out of his shell and become accepted by his peers, Wesley and a friend decided to rob their own high school. They wanted to do the robbery that would not only give them a thrill, but also boost their social standing. But their daring burglary quickly gained national attention. Local newspapers reported that professional thieves from Detroit had broken into the school and stolen $270,000 worth of equipment. This incident quickly changed Wesley's social life. Suddenly, he was the center of attention, and his newfound popularity gained him the acceptance he longed for. But it was just the start of a career filled with illegal activities for the young kid from Windsor, Ontario. He didn't just want to be popular and socially accepted. He wanted to be rich, too, and that desire for money kick-started a historic chain of events. Wesley Weber didn't enter the money printing world as an amateur. Rather, he had quite some experience forging official documents like welfare cards, checks, and insurance certificates. Not only this, Weber forged gift certificates as well. It was his forging skills that landed him in jail in 1997. When he was sentenced to 3 months behind bars. He wanted to live a lavish life, and a mere 3-month jail sentence wouldn't stop him. So, along with forgery, Wesley's other businesses included petty thefts and the production of marijuana. But his marijuana operation was also busted. Although Wesley didn't get prison time for it, he was house arrested for 18 months and had to do 240 hours of community service as well. Wesley's ambitions were big, and he needed to find a way to make money quickly and safely. This was when he came up with the infamous idea of printing his own money. Weber was a tech nerd. He had loved computers since childhood, and it was time to put his knowledge about technology to work. He had tried counterfeiting $10 and $20 bills as a kid, but this time, he thought of going big with duplicating $100 bills. So he began. The initial trial didn't reap the results he wanted. The counterfeit bills weren't close to the real currency, and anyone could tell they were fake. If Wesley wanted to live his dream of a lavish life, he needed to identify the shortcomings in the counterfeit bills and improve them. And he did exactly that. He scanned and studied his copies to find exactly where they were falling short. He discovered two distinguishing security features in the real $100 bills that his counterfeit currency was missing. The first problem with his fake currency was the shine of the bills. Real currency didn't glow under UV light. The second problem was the security foil. The original $100 bills had polymer dots and a security foil that could shift colors. We are going to talk about these problems and their ingenious solutions in the later part of the video. Weber knew it would take more than the equipment at his house to print the perfect counterfeit bill. So he started contacting paper, foil, and ink vendors in Canada and the US. After much research and trying, Weber finally found the components he believed were the key to building his empire. While Weber had top-quality material for producing counterfeit currency, he decided to do the printing on his off-the-shelf inkjet printer. The reason behind this decision was simple. It could create better copies of the counterfeit $100 bill than high-end copiers. Now there was just one thing left for him to try: put all the bill components together and start printing. But before he could start his printing operation, he needed a trustworthy team because the amount of money Wesley was thinking about making would require more than one man to print. So who did he choose as his partners? Let's find out. After hitting some speed breakers initially, Wesley was finally on course to make his dream of printing countless money a reality. But he needed extra hands to help him to expedite his operation and diversify his skill set. He added 3 people to his team, and together, they became a formidable group of men with extraordinary skills. First of Wesley's 3-member team was Dustin Cossum, who was responsible for applying the optical security device. This was a critical role because it required a high level of precision and attention to detail. Ryan Hudair, the second member of the team, was tasked with applying a clear coat to the counterfeit currency, sealing the ink in order to enhance the authenticity of the fake currency notes. Whereas, the third and last member of Wesley Weber's team, Anthony Cabarill, oversaw different aspects of the money-making operation. Their synchronized and efficient efforts resulted in producing the most sophisticated counterfeit $100 bills the Canadian authorities had ever seen. But the process was not as simple as one might think. This next section of the video will tell you why. All the money-making components were in place, and Wesley's team was ready. And so began one of the most notorious white-collar crimes in Canadian history. Wesley and his team meticulously designed the template for the $100 bill, painstakingly crafting both its front and back. They ensured that every single detail of the note was replicated exactly how it was on the original, because their whole operation would have fallen apart otherwise. Counterfeiting the $100 bill was a complex task. The fake bill had to look real, quite literally. From casual observation at a superstore to advanced counterfeit detection methods at banks, the bill had to pass scrutiny at every level of the economic chain. Wesley and his team were well aware of the challenges they faced, so they worked on the smallest of things, like adjusting the brightness, sharpness, saturation, and color of the bill. The images to be printed on the bill were also adjusted to perfection. After several sleepless nights, they were finally able to produce a template that was almost as good as the original $10 bill. Any other counterfeiter would have been satisfied with this feat, but Wesley wasn't just any other counterfeiter. He was a perfectionist, so he needed to make sure that every aspect of the bill was absolutely perfect, with neither any flaws nor irregularities. It was his perfectionist tendencies that he and his team discovered that while the counterfeit bill was near perfection, it was missing an important feature: the optical security device. This device was like a foil that changed colors when tilted. Replicating this particular security feature was an extraordinary challenge, and the team needed an extraordinary solution. But the problem was that Wesley was doing something illegal, so he couldn't simply ask someone to help him solve the problem. He needed to come up with a solution himself, and he did. First, he needed to get the material from the market. For this, Wesley visited several foil manufacturers, pretending to be the CEO of a company called Pro Custom Graphics. His deceitful but persuasive communication skills granted him access to the foil material he was looking for. But the job was not finished yet, because now Wesley and his team members had to come up with a way to replicate the security feature exactly how it was in the original bills. Wesley was determined to create a money-making business, so he found a solution to this problem as well. Wesley's associates were impressed by his ingenuity and resourcefulness. They had never seen anyone navigate the worlds of legitimate and illegitimate businesses as cleverly as Wesley. These abilities set him apart as the mastermind of the money-making operation. All the apparent problems had been resolved, and the four men could finally start printing counterfeit money. They say, greed is a bottomless pit. This held true for Wesley and his partners in crime. With each passing day, they started eyeing more and more profits. They knew the consequences of their actions, yet they kept producing the counterfeit currency at an unprecedented level because greed had completely blinded them. The operation, which had started as a small-scale gig, turned into a full-fledged money-making business. The equipment involved in this crime was upgraded, and advanced software was purchased to improve the efficiency and authenticity of the counterfeit bills. In just a few weeks after starting their operation, the group could produce $100,000 in counterfeit bills in a single run, thanks to a hydraulic laser paper cutter. Wesley Weber knew if his counterfeit currency was to mix with the original bills undetected, they both needed to look similar. This was a strange and interesting challenge because the wear and tear in bills comes after they get circulated in the economy for some time. But it seemed Wesley had a solution for everything. To solve this problem, the newly printed counterfeit bills were placed in a dryer with clay poker chips and were made to tumble for approximately 11 minutes. This practice made them emerge out of the dryer worn and torn, and they appeared genuine. It was time to test the bills in the market, and the results were a pleasant surprise for every member of Wesley's team, including the mastermind himself. The counterfeit bills went undetected. They looked and felt like genuine currency, so people didn't doubt their authenticity. Wesley, Anthony, Dustin, and Ryan could see themselves sitting on the mountain of limitless wealth. But little did they know that this exact ambition would soon land them in trouble. This is where the story of Canada's biggest counterfeiter goes south. The money-making operation had expanded, and so did the counterfeiting team's spending patterns. All four members started living lavish lives, which they hadn't even imagined some time ago. From luxury cars to designer clothes and expensive purchases, the extravagance was clearly visible. And this new lifestyle was fueled by the proceeds of their illegal activity. Similarly, as the team leader in counterfeiting operations, Wesley also led the way in lavish spending. He became so obsessed with the thrill of his newfound affluence that he would often stay awake for 20 hours a day, spending most of the time shopping. Wesley had a special love for luxury cars, and his illicit wealth allowed him to buy as many as he could. But love clouds one's judgment sometimes, and this is exactly what happened with Wesley Weber. As money started coming in, Wesley bought a top-of-the-line Mustang Cobra because he loved the model. He wanted to customize the car with high-end modifications and transform it into a symbol of success. And that's where he made a mistake that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Wesley wanted to put his favorite rims on the wheels of his Mustang, so he went to a dealer to get them. When it came to the payment for the rings, Wesley thought it was a good idea to pay with the counterfeit currency. The dealer, while checking the authenticity of the bills, suspected foul play because several bills had the same serial numbers printed on them. This moment was the turning point in Wesley Weber's money-making empire. The dealer reported the counterfeit bills to the relevant authorities, but little did he know that he had just set the wheels of justice in motion against one of Canada's most notorious white-collar criminals. The law enforcement agencies instantly got alerted when they heard about counterfeit bills with identical serial numbers. Authorities initiated an investigation into the issue, and soon, a nobody, Wesley Weber, was on the radar of Canada's law enforcement agencies. Before the incident, Wesley had successfully eluded authorities, but his careless mistake made his counterfeiting operation vulnerable. After determining that they had eyes on the right guys, the agency's next challenge was to gather evidence against the 4 members of the illegal money-making empire. So they began keeping an eye on Wesley and his associates. Their movements were being tracked 24 hours a day. Soon, the counterfeiting crew realized that they were being watched. So, their actions became erratic. They would recklessly drive, make spontaneous U-turns, and do evasive maneuvers to get rid of the law enforcement cars tailing them. They even started changing their phone numbers regularly to avoid electronic surveillance, while each of the 4 members was determined to avoid capture at all costs. Wesley, in particular, feared going to jail more than the others. The reason was his earlier jail sentence and time in prison. But the ever-present threats of arrest didn't seem to stop Wesley and his team. Their counterfeit $100 bill, due to its nearly perfect resemblance to the original one, was in demand in the market, so they printed fake notes day in and day out. Their counterfeiting operation had become so huge that even they couldn't control it even if they wanted to. This once again put them in the bubble where they felt invincible. While Wesley and his associates started believing they had outsmarted the authorities, the law and enforcement agencies started getting ready for action against the counterfeiting crew. In October 2000, the authorities had gathered enough evidence to launch a full-scale operation against Wesley Weber and his team members. But the timing of this operation was critical. The counterfeiting operation was in full swing, and the 4-member crew was printing fake $100 bills at a rate never seen before. This was a clear indication that Wesley Weber's illicit empire was about to expand even further, and the authorities had to strike before that could happen. After gathering ample evidence against Wesley and his crew, the authorities arrived at the location of the counterfeiting operation with search warrants. They had professionally and carefully observed every aspect of Wesley's operation, and it was time to catch the culprits red-handed. When the officers entered the building where the whole money-making operation had been operating, they were both surprised and shocked by the sight that greeted them. The room was filled with counterfeit bills that were scattered all over the tables and equipment. The presence of over $250,000 counterfeit dollars in plain view was a clear indication that Wesley's money-making business was in full swing. Let's talk about the 4-member counterfeiting crew who had no idea whatsoever about a possible raid on their operations. They were so busy printing money and enjoying a lavish lifestyle that the raid caught them completely off guard. 2 members of the crew even had gold paint on their hands from their work. A successful operation that caught the counterfeiters red-handed while they were committing the crime spread a wave of satisfaction among law enforcement officers. They had put a lot of time and effort into exposing Wesley Weber's operation, and all their hard work had finally bore fruit. Wesley Weber and his crew, despite their attempts to evade the authorities, were in custody and faced strict consequences for their actions. As the legal proceedings progressed, it became clear that Ryan, Dustin, and Anthony did not play as big a role as Wesley did in establishing the empire of counterfeit currency. The jail time given to each of the 4 members reflected that. Anthony Cabariel, Ryan Hudair, and Dustin Cossum were each sentenced to 2 years in prison for their involvement in the fake money printing operation. Wesley Weber, the mastermind, pleaded guilty to the charges and was sentenced to 5 years in prison for being the driving force behind the counterfeiting operation. The arrest and conviction of Wesley and his associates was a stern warning to all those who were either already counterfeiting currency or were thinking of replicating Wesley's audacious feat. The arrest of Wesley Weber and his accomplices brought an end to one of Canada's most sophisticated counterfeiting operations. More than $250,000 in counterfeit $1 bills, as well as the equipment and materials necessary to make millions more, were seized by the authorities. The illegal operation had flooded Canada's market with fake currency, causing businesses to bear huge financial losses and threatening the integrity of Canada's currency. Even though the white-collar criminal was in jail, facing the consequences of his illegal actions, he still wanted to make a lot of money, legally or illegally. He started his new venture soon after he was released from prison. After spending 5 years in jail, Weber was released in August 2006. He moved to Richmond Hill in Ontario and started selling phones. Doesn't sit right with a guy who was printing counterfeit currency just a few years back, right? Well, the phone business wasn't Wesley's long-term plan. Trading business was. Weber learned about market trading while in prison. After moving to Ontario and selling phones for a while, he founded a consulting firm called Goldbridge Financial. Incorporated. This firm's unique feature was that it provided financial services without registration. Weber also founded a digital currency startup company. But he was not the sole owner of this company. Rather, his wife, Michelle Cam, was the co-founder. The company, Encryptex, acts as a platform to store and trade digital cryptocurrencies. Weber knew that, due to his stained past, he might not be able to get the company listed on a public exchange and raise funds from investors. So he once again used his sharp mind and tried to get the company listed on a public exchange under the alias Wesley Cam. In 2011, the Ontario Securities Commission, OSC, discovered that Weber was engaged in unregistered investment advising and stock trading. Both these practices broke the law. Weber pleaded guilty to violating a ban from the OSC in 2011, which prohibited him from trading. He was sentenced to 90 days in prison and 2 years of probation by an Ontario court judge. But it wasn't just trading that kept Wesley occupied after getting released from prison for his counterfeiting endeavors. Remember when, at the start of the video, we mentioned that Weber was arrested for illegally growing marijuana early in his crime days? Well, there was something about the illegal growth of pot that must have captivated Weber. He did that again in 2010. The only difference was that the first time, he grew marijuana in the basement of his house, and the second time, he did it on another farmer's land. In 2017, he even spoke about marijuana in front of the city councillors at Toronto's Licensing and Standards Committee. In his speech, Weber, who was using the alias Jeff Murray this time, gave his recommendations to the councillors on how the cannabis establishments should be regulated. A year later, in October 2018, the use of marijuana for recreational purposes was made legal in Canada under the Cannabis Act. Soon after the Cannabis Act came, Weber declared that he had helped with the financing of a chain of cannabis stores named CAFA. However, an investigation by CBC News discovered that the store chain that he was talking about actually belonged to Weber himself. He was one of its founders and main owners, and his wife, Michelle, worked as director of the company. Wesley Weber's name will forever be linked to one of the biggest counterfeiting operations in Canada's history. His technical expertise, meticulous attention to detail, and relentless pursuit of perfection had nearly destroyed Canada's economy. In fact, his counterfeit $100 bills were so similar to the original ones that police colleges started showing them to the trainee officers while teaching them about fraud and counterfeiting. Wesley's story is a testament that intelligence, hard work, and determination should always be applied for productive purposes. When these attributes are used for criminal activities, then the end result is never good. Wesley's talents and abilities could have been put to better use in a variety of legitimate fields, but instead, he chose a life of crime. The story of his transformation from an ordinary computer geek to a counterfeiter is a reminder that greed for quick wealth can cloud a person's judgment and force him or her to make life-changing decisions. Wesley Weber's counterfeiting empire came crashing down because he and his partners always wanted more than they had. Weber's pursuit of a lavish lifestyle made him make careless mistakes, which eventually led to his downfall. His story is a reminder that a person's criminal activities come with a heavy price that needs to be paid sooner or later.